Don't forget Judge Hannah Dugan. I won't let you. She's the judge that stood up for the rule of law in a way that Donald Trump couldn't even imagine. You know, the president of the United States who believes it's his choice whether he's going to support and defend the Constitution, whether he's going to defend the rule of law and due process, which he confessed publicly, which in any other time would lead to his impeachment. Hannah Dugan, the judge, Milwaukee, Wisconsin Circuit Court, criminal court judge who was hit with 2 felony charges because she wouldn't allow the Trump administration to use her courtroom and courthouse as the backdrop for an illegal arrest of somebody in order to deport them. And for that, she got slapped with 2 federal charges. But to the rescue is Paul Clement. Paul Clement, who has now decided he is going to side against the Trump administration once again, is a right-wing Federalist Society, former Solicitor General for George W. Bush, who argued over 100 Supreme Court cases, usually on the wrong side of the angels in history for me. He was against the Obamacare Administrative Act. He was against transgenders in the military. He was against certain aspects of a woman's right to choose. But I'll tell you where he's coming up strong now. He just joined the legal team for Judge Hannah Dugan in Wisconsin, bringing a certain gravitas and intellectual heft. And it's not the only case that Paul Clement has opposed the Trump administration, because he's currently representing Wilmer Hale, one of the several law firms that Donald Trump has tried to blacklist. So Paul Clement, we're going to talk more about him right here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. Let's dive into it. And while you're here on Legal AF, hit the subscribe button. It's one of the ways and one of the main ways you can show you support our content here at the intersection of law and politics. I've talked a lot about Paul Clement over the last several weeks, more than I ever thought I would. Paul Clement represented or was appointed by Judge Ho in New York to give him advice as an amicus brief about whether Eric Adams' indictment should be dismissed or not, as Donald Trump wanted to do with his Department of Justice. And so he was hired as a kind of an elite Republican former prosecutor to provide that kind of guidance to the court. He ultimately thought that the indictment should be dismissed with prejudice so that Eric Adams wouldn't have the sword of Damocles hanging over his head. And then Paul Clement popped up once again representing Wilmer Hale. There's a series of law firms who have all filed suit against the Trump administration rather than bend over and pay extortion to the Trump administration, which a dozen other law firms have done. The law firms like Wilmer Hale and Jenner Block and Sussman Gottfried and Perkins Coie have all separately hired counsel, filed their lawsuits to challenge an executive order, making them persona non grata within the federal government and effectively try to put them out of business for their First Amendment expression as law firms. Paul Clement came to the rescue of Wilmer Hale, once again demonstrating to the American people, I hope, that when it comes to things like First Amendment expression and attacking law firms, we don't see red and blue. We just see red, white, and blue. So there's many things that Paul Clement has done in his career that I don't admire, although I do have to acknowledge his considerable legal prowess. But here, where he's now jumped to the defense of Wilmer Hale and has jumped to the defense of Hannah Dugan, the judge, then I have to give him I have to give him some recognition and acknowledgement. And it's important. Judge Dugan's doing the right thing. And the fact that people are flocking to her aid is really, really heartwarming. Let me just remind people what we're talking about. About 3 weeks ago, Hannah Dugan, presiding over a criminal court part in Wisconsin in the Milwaukee courthouse, had on her docket, I think it was the number 8 that day, a defendant for an assault and battery related to domestic violence that she was processing. At or about that time, there was quite a commotion and stir out in her hallway. She sent her staff out to find out what happened, and there was 5 or 6 federal agents from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, out there with not a judge-issued arrest warrant, an administrative arrest warrant from somebody in ICE. Well, you can understand why Judge Dugan may not have thought that was worth the paper it was written on, given this Trump administration completely disobeys and flouts the law and violates due process and doesn't recognize the constitutional right for due process and Fifth Amendment rights when it comes to immigration. So pardon her if she wanted something more than a piece of paper from one of Donald Trump's chosen minions. How about a judge, she said. Do you have a judge warrant? No, because the warrant that they showed up in her court with to pick up one of the people that was in her justice system, so to speak, was is not even good enough to get you to unlock the door at home. If somebody had that warrant and said, ICE outside, do you have a warrant? They couldn't say yes, and they couldn't say you got to open the door. So she said, go, get out of here. In the meantime, go talk to my chief judge about process, because this is the third time this week you guys have tried this. We don't want our court system in the state to be the scene of a pickup and an arrest and the commotion around it while we're trying to administer justice. So she defends justice and how it's administered and doesn't want her courthouse and courtroom sullied by the federal government and the feds taking a crap all over it. Just pick up the guy outside. How hard is this? No, they thought if they did it in front of Dugan, knowing that Dugan is a liberal, knowing that Dugan worked for Catholic Services and worked for Legal Aid Society, they thought she may come out, make a scene. We might have to arrest her, have her perp walk and get her photos taken. And then we can use it to threaten and have an interim effect over all judges out there. That's why they did it. They set her up. I said it was entrapment the first time I heard it. So now people have rallied around Judge Dugan. They didn't even get a grand jury to indict her. They got the lowest level of indicting paper, and it's temporary at best. A criminal complaint needs to be replaced by a grand jury indictment. They haven't gotten that yet, and she's doing a great job at assembling a crackerjack team of former federal prosecutors, and in this case, the Solicitor General of the United States, to be her lawyer. And they're rallying to her side because what we're seeing is you're either with it or you're either with us or you're against us. You're either for the rule of law all the time, regardless of what party is in front of you, or you're not. And we here on Legal AF, we are for the rule of law. We are for, no matter where it takes us, we're for that foundation of our constitutional republic. We don't want lawyers, even if we don't agree with them, bashed, prosecuted, intimidated because we don't like the clients they represent, or somehow to try to compromise their independent judgment or their ethics. Same thing with judges. We don't want that either. Donald Trump just wants to drop his pants and crap all over the court system because it didn't treat him nicely, because it indicted him, because it prosecuted him, because it convicted him. And when you take a convicted felon and the United States Supreme Court gives them an immunity, get out of jail free decision, this is what you get. So this is the moment you can stand up and step forward to protect people like Hannah Dugan. I'm sure there's very little in a conversation that Hannah Dugan, the judge, and Paul Clement, the former Solicitor General for the Bush administration, have in common. I'm sure they do. If you went through the top 10 things or the top 50 cases that Paul Clement argued, I'm sure Hannah Dugan would only probably agree with one or two of them at best. But they all agree that the rule of law is under full frontal attack by the Trump administration, and it must stop. And all people of good nature, of proper respect for our constitutional republic need to step forward and protect people like Hannah Dugan. So you rarely hear me say this. But Paul Clement, we see you. We see what you're doing. You're picking your moments, but you're stepping forward to oppose the Trump administration. And it's at great political and legal risk. I mean, any day now, Donald Trump could issue a executive order against Paul Clement, taking away his security clearance, taking away his ability to go into federal buildings or federal courthouses to pay him back. I don't think Trump will do that, but Trump's done a lot of things I didn't think he would do. That's how we got in this mess. So we're going to continue to follow it all right here. You're on Legal AF. There's a couple of ways to support us. Hit the subscribe button. That's one. And that'll help get us to the 700,000 by next week that we're shooting for. And that's important because the bigger we are, the more your voice is heard, the more content I can bring on, the more contributors I can bring on, the more podcasts I can bring on, all here in your home for Law and Politics, Legal AF. And then Legal AF, the Substack. Legal AF Substack is a place that you can find the actual court filings. I do a morning briefing, if you will, called Morning AF for all those that like things legal and political. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. And I got some some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.